And good evening, race fans. Welcome here as we get ready to continue on the playoffs for the cNASCAR Chris Cup Series here in the Southern Florida area, Homestead Miami Speedway. We will have 8 drivers moving on to the next round of the playoffs. This is the first elimination race. I'm Seth Cole, being joined here tonight by Logan Brakey. And Logan, you've been here just about every step of the way. You've seen the competition these drivers have had, and you saw a wild one last week at Chicagoland. What are we going to see here tonight at Homestead?
I think it's going to be the action tonight's going to be a little bit more tame, Seth. We're going to see Homestead is one of those tracks that we go to consistently where it always seems to run the same way no matter what update iRacing throws at us. It's a lot of time spent off throttle mid-corner, and I think we're going to see some pretty spread out action here, and we're going to really see the test of these drivers. We're going to see these drivers' skill put to the test. Excuse me.
As we take a look at the starting grid for this race, a couple of drivers coming off that first playoff race last week with varied results. You had Chris Bass, who finished third in that race and comes into this race leading the current playoff standings. Alongside of him, Chris Gossett, who was up in the top 5 for a good portion of that Chicagoland race before getting involved in a wreck on that final lap.
Yeah, really unfortunate end for him there as well. And one thing I'd like to point out too, Seth, is our race winner from last week was Christopher Tate. He is actually withdrawn from the series entirely due to some personal complications. I believe he said it was just something as simple as his work schedule now interfering. So no longer participating in this series, which honestly, it opens up the door for these competitors because we've seen him dominate the season and start the chase off with a bang. So essentially nobody locked in from last weekend. He would have been locked into the next the round of 8 with that win, but because of his absence from this race and the remainder of the series, that spot is now back up for grabs. So nobody locked in coming into this race.
Absolutely right. Not only winning last week in the first race of the playoffs at Chicagoland, but winning 2 of the last 3 events as he won 3 weeks ago. I believe it was at Atlanta Motor Speedway. You've also got this 43 up here. I mean, I kind of think that based off what we saw last week, that Gossett could play a bit of a spoiler here for these playoff contenders as well. If he goes to victory lane, again, that takes away a locked-in spot for some of these drivers to move on to the round of 8.
Yeah, and he kind of joined about the second half of the regular season, and ever since we saw him make his first race here, he's been a contender for the win every single weekend and hasn't been able to really close it out except for once, I believe. So absolutely going to be playing a spoiler this afternoon, but it's everybody's just worrying about the guys that they got to race with to get into that round of 8 right now. So it should be an exciting afternoon here.
We'll fill you in on what the playoff situation looks like. Drivers around that bubble zone, but it's going to be Chris Bass leading us down. 134 laps here tonight at Homestead, and we're green flag racing.
Good start from Chris Bass going into turn 1. What we're going to see here, Seth, throughout the afternoon, this race will transition from late afternoon period into night. So we're going to see that bottom line for the start of the race and for the start of the green flag runs kind of be the dominant line. And then as the run goes on, we're going to see these guys maybe spread out, play around with some grooves. Looks like they're kind of already doing just that. Some guys running up near the wall, some guys staying down at the bottom. It's all going to depend on how the tires react to each line.
Christopher Takis very comfortable going up to that third line through 3 and 4, whereas Gossett wanted to run right down along the bottom. You can see some shadows already kind of creeping there in turn 1. So that's going to affect the car during the course of a lap. Going to have some grip up there in turn 1 that you might not necessarily have over in 3 and 4.
Yeah, it helps from a broadcast perspective that I just had a league race here last weekend, so I know exactly how this track is going to be driving for these guys, and it's crazy how much it's going to change throughout the course of the race. For right now, as I said, that bottom line is going to be the go-to line. You see guys already starting in the back, kind of in the middle of the pack, really holding their own on that top line, but that's going to be more brutal on those right side tires. So you're going to see guys wanting to get down to that bottom line. We call it the bottom line, but to a spectator's eye, Sam, it's more that middle groove of the racetrack there, that where that dark area of the racetrack starts.
We talked about the fact that this race is going to start kind of in twilight and then transition to night as the race goes on. Had an opportunity to talk with one of our playoff contenders, Chris Roberge, prior to this race, and he said one thing these drivers are really going to have to worry about is the tire fall off, which really hits about into 25 laps into a run. Are we going to see that less and less as the track cools down and we get into the nighttime conditions near the closing stages of this race?
The tires are still going to fall off quite a bit, but at night. But you're going to see the speed stay up a little bit, a few laps longer at night than you would during the day, just because of the cooler track temp. Car's going to have a little bit more grip. Track temp's at 84 degrees right now. It actually just jumped up to 85 as I opened up the info tab there. So it's not a scorching track temp, but it is warm. But by the time the sun goes down, that's going to drop down to around 78, 79 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's going to be a lot more grip on that track surface. Guys are going to be able to run into the corners a little bit deeper, and it'll carry a little bit more speed off. So you'll see the tire life last maybe a few laps longer before it really starts to fall off.
Chris Bass looking in his rearview mirror and sees that Chris Rio's car, number 43 of Chris Tommy Gossett, closing in. It's now less than a car length between those two. We mentioned about the playoff situation with this being an elimination race. We had 15 drivers. If we've eliminated out Christopher Tate, you already touched on him earlier. They are all battling for 8 spots in the playoffs. And right now, down around that cutoff line, a couple of names that really jump out to me. Chris Hubka came in that 8th position. He is not in tonight's field, and he was only 17 points ahead of Christopher Lawrence, who's currently got that 0-1 running in the 6th position.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate for Hubka there. If I'm him, I just gotta hope that something drastic happens to Christopher Lawrence and that he winds up with essentially 18th and 19th place points. As you said, only a 17-point gap. So it's a point for position here, Seth, essentially. So we'd be needing to see him finish 18th or 19th. Respectively, if he was looking to keep his way in that round of 8, providing nobody else has unreal days behind him, because Cliff Corbeau is right there behind Lawrence just by a point. So pretty grim situation there for Hubka not being here today.
Another driver that also is not in tonight's field but has a bit of a cushion that I think with only 19 drivers in tonight's field will advance to the next round. That is Josh Personette, who had a really good run last week. I believe it was a second-place finish at Chicagoland and jumped up to 4th in the standings. He's got about a roughly 29-point gap between himself and that 8th in the standings cutoff line. So it looks like that 26 car would be pretty safe to move on to the next round.
Starting to already see it here, Seth, at least a little bit further back in the pack, or guys are really starting to spread out, run a little bit of a higher line through 1 and 2 and making it down to coming down to the bottom in 3 and 4. That's one of the things you'll notice too a lot throughout the evening is 1 and 2 are usually the corners where you can get away with running a higher line throughout the course of the run, and then you want to get down to that bottom groove in 3 and 4 and to allow for the car to just track up to the wall on that wide exit of turn 4 to carry as much speed down the front straightaways. So it's interesting to see how many guys are taking advantage of this track being one of the few that you can run multi-groove here and still maintain some speed.
Not really sure if anybody really wants to go up there right against the wall, but Chris Edwards nearly was into the wall over in turns 1 and 2. You saw him on a slightly higher line there through 3 and 4 as Chris Raul Meza is going to get around him for the 12th position. A little bit further up, we've got some battling still between Christopher Reese in the 62, Chris Jones in the 33. You see them with the green spoilers, splitters, and driver banners. Both those drivers coming into this race right now, 6th and 7th in the playoff standings.
Yeah, I've been watching these guys for a few laps here, and you can see, Seth, how the 33 of Chris Jones is really, he's pulling on that top side there. You see the big launch he gets off of turn 4 down that front straightaway is going to actually clear Chris Reese by about 2 or 3 car lengths there. We'll see if he's able to close that up on the bottom. You do see guys running down there right next to that white line there, Seth, but there's not as much grip down there. There's a little bit of progressive banking here in Homestead. So what that means is there's a little bit less banking down there on that lighter part of the track than there is on the darker part of the track, just a lane above it.
See also back there the Christian Wide, number 88, of, or actually, I'm sorry, it's Nation Chris, I should say, number 88 of Chris Otto. Multiple time winner this season. He's currently in the 11th position, and non-playoff driver Christopher B. Williams finds himself right in the middle of all these green banners.
Yeah, just doing his best to try and play spoiler here. As you said there in that 09 machine. Christopher Williams, he's shown some good speed throughout the season there, Seth. He's shown some good speed. He's shown that he's capable of running up at the front, but just hasn't really been able to close out the deal. Haven't put together a decent run here to start. 14 laps in, running inside the top 10. Looking to make that outside work, Seth. We're going to see that a lot tonight.
1 week it's Carlos, 1 week it's Sam, then it's me. You never know who Logan's going to get paired up with here in the Chris Cup Series.
It's a game of roulette up here in the broadcast booth.
Battle on for that 6th position. That's Chris Alonzo King in the Chris King Chevrolet in the 80 machine, trying to get to the inside of Chris Roberge. And I was watching Roberge out there on the track during practice. This scheme just puts a smile on my face, throwing it back to Bill Elliott's 2002 Dodge Viper. Beautiful paint scheme here, even down to the detail of the Viper eyes on the headlights, the fangs on either side of the Mustang logo just under the grill. Beautiful paint scheme there. And of course, Wild Bill from Dawsonville. He was former winner here at Homestead back in 2001. So we'll see if this livery will give a little bit of Homestead good luck to Roberge.
I tell you what, Seth, if there's a collection of paint schemes that I miss the most in NASCAR, it's the Evernham cars from back in the day. Those Dodge dealership paint schemes used to be so good, run most famously, as you said, by Bill Elliott, but then it transferred into the hands of Casey Kane and Jeremy Mayfield in the 9 and 19. My goodness, were those some nice paint schemes, especially whenever they swapped up the color. For a long time, it was this solid red that we're looking at here, but then they went to the red and white, and it was flip-flopped on the cars, and my goodness, did it look great.
Absolutely did. I echo every syllable. Loved really just all the Dodge paint schemes, whether it was Everham, whether it was Penske. They always seem to bring really good schemes. Whoa, we nearly had a little contact there as Chris Leach drove it deep there into turn 1, almost into the back of the U.S. Chris Chevrolet of Christopher Lawrence. And this is a very important race for Christopher Lawrence, because you already touched on the fact that, with the fact that it's a 17-point cushion between Hupka back to Lawrence, Lawrence with 19 cars in the field has to pretty much finish up inside the podium if he's going to nab away that final playoff position.
Yeah, and he's off to, I think he knows that, because he's off to a very good start here. We're seeing him, I've already noticed him, along with a lot of other guys, really start to take care of their tires. And the way you can see that is how early they check up for corner entry, Seth. They back up their corner entry to get a nice smooth turn into the corner, and ultimately allows for more time on the power coming off the corner, so you get a better launch off on the guy you're chasing or trying to run away from. So doing a good job of tire management so far, using up all the exit there of turn 4, getting right up to that wall, get a good launch down the front stretch and into turn 1.
Now, while we're talking about Christopher Lawrence being able to point his way in, there are a couple of drivers in the field as well that if they were to take a checkered flag here tonight that are behind the cut line, that would not only Hupka, but also Lawrence out of the top 8. A couple of those guys are running up here towards the front. You've got Chris Jonathan Leach. He was 12th in the playoff points coming this race. And Christopher Takis was 12th in the playoff stands. He's up in the 3rd position. So, a number of these guys could win their way into the next round.
Yeah, and that would be huge. But like I said, because you've got that one spot up for grabs that's not clinched by anybody, Seth, you've got the opportunity to just points your way into the top 8. Especially if you're up there, you're sitting 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, just looking briefly at the point standings. All of those guys have a chance to really points their way in with good finishes today, but obviously you want that win to make it a little easier on yourself. You don't have to do the mental calculations. You could just be like, you know what, if I win this race, I'm in. So it doesn't matter how everybody else does. So the pressure is on equally for everybody here. Nobody's sitting on insurance to take into this next round. Everybody's got to go out there and fight to get into that top 8.
Saw a couple of things happen there through 3 and 4, back around just out in the inside and outside of the top 10. Chris Otto went up to that third groove and just the car seemed to drift up towards the wall. And we also saw that it looked like some smoke coming around the right rear of Christopher Williams. We're 22 laps into this run. These drivers are realizing now that these tires are not able to do what they did in the first 20 laps.
Yeah, and when you run that top groove there, Seth, you can kind of see there's a seam on the racetrack, Seth, kind of that it runs down the middle of the straightaways, but then in the corners it kind of carries up to the top part of the corner. That's about where you want to position your car. Maybe your left side tires on the inside of that seam and kind of almost treat it as if your car is riding on a rail that's positioned on that seam. That's about the groove you're going to see guys running whenever they choose the top. It's where most of the grip is there. There's a little bit more banking on the outer part of that seam that's going to help pull the car around the corner. But it's very line sensitive, as you saw. So if you misjudge that entry a little bit, you get up just a tad higher than you should be, it's really tough to maintain that speed throughout the corner.
Following all this battling from about 5th place on back to just around the 13th position, because this is where all the passing is going on. Up at the front, Chris Gossett continues to lead 3 seconds in hand over Chris Bass, and it's another 2 seconds back to Christopher Takas. So the top 3 have really gapped themselves.
So here's the thing about Gossett leading here, Sam, and if should he go on or any other spoiler go on to win this race, the race between the chasers becomes a battle for whatever is the highest position filled by the first chaser. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but right now it's Chris Bass running second. He's the highest running chaser. That's essentially the position on the racetrack that everybody else is shooting for at this point with the 3 second gap that Gossett has. Highest finishing chaser, with pretty good odds you're going to get into the next round.
Yeah, and of course, Chris Bass with the playoff points he accumulated during the regular season and a good run to start out the playoffs last week comes into this race the playoff points leader. Huge gap between himself all the way back to that cutoff line and run up here again inside of the top 3 for what would be back-to-back weeks. I mean, yeah, looks like it's definitely going to be an easy transition into the next round of the playoffs. And, that's another thing, too. Chris Bass right now with the gap that he's got back to 8th place probably could DNF this race and still advance in. But a lot of drivers say that you want to have good momentum from round to round.
Sorry, Seth, we got a car that spun onto pit road. I'm not sure. It was Chris Edwards in the 72.
Got a lot of front end damage there too. I wonder if he got the wall.
Front end missing entirely. Looks like he was there for quite a while. Yeah, he's going back and taking a look. The incident happened in turn 3, got up into the wall and bounced down into the 71. Got the wall again and tried to bring it down pit road, but pounded it into the inside tire barrier there, and that is going to be his race over, I'm afraid.
It looked like when he went up and got the wall, like that car had already had damage to the right front. Like that wasn't the first time he'd been up and into a wall here at Homestead tonight.
Yeah, I noticed that too. And when you get right side damage here, oh man, does it affect the handling of this thing? It gets so tight with right side damage, Seth.
Now we've gone into an awfully long green flag run here to start this thing. 27 laps in, yet to see a caution. So how far can these drivers stretch it? The number I was given was about 48 laps they can make it. So based on calculations, let's say we go green to the end. These drivers are looking pretty much at a 2-stop race.
Yeah, 48 laps does sound about right. 75% fuel limit, 75% of what a real full tank would be. So 48 laps is around that number, and race distance 134 laps. So yeah, you're about correct there. Be 2 stops and maybe you see some guys throw in a 3rd stop there, Seth, if this race goes green the whole way. I don't see it going green the whole way. I see at least 1 or 2 cautions being thrown in the mix, but on the off chance it does, you might see somebody throw in a 3rd stop, maybe just to have the fresh tires to make it work. Somebody a little bit deeper in the field, maybe throw in a Hail Mary.
Just to give an idea of just how much the pace is backed off for these drivers, if we use our race leader Chris Gossett as a bit of a reference, his best lap in this race, a 31.7. Right now he's running 33.7s, 2-second difference. Some of the guys behind him are even running 2.5 seconds slower than what they were running at the initial start of this race.
Yeah, and from what I remember from the race I was in last weekend, I think that differential is going to drop down even more by about maybe another second and a half. So it just depends on how hard you ran your tires at the beginning of this stage, or this stint rather. How much tires you have left on that car. There's a few factors a few different variables that'll get thrown into play there to determine how quickly or how far your lap times are going to drop off.
You mentioned at the top of the program that Chris Gossett kind of coming into this race with a little bit of redemption on his mind, was up in the running to potentially win last week at Chicagoland, got involved in a wreck on the final lap going into turn one. The driver that was in the middle of all that as well, right here, the number 62 of Christopher Reese. And we're starting to see now the drivers that tested here during practice to see what their cars would do on the long run, because I'm seeing a number of our guys falling towards the back. Chris Jones back in 10th, Reese back in 11th, and Chris Roberge, who was about maybe 15 laps ago up battling for around the 6th position, he's faded all the way back to the 13th position.
And that's all got to do with the tires, Seth. It's just we're going to be, or at least I'm going to be beating that drum all race long because it's so important. But then you look on the flip side of that, the 3 drivers I've noticed that have made huge moves just based on where they lined up to start this race. First one's a non-chaser, Chris Williams in that 09 Chris Depot Chevrolet. Started 10th. He's all the way up to 5th now. He's up 5 spots. Chris Otto, one of our chasers, started 15th. He's worked his way up to 7th. And Chris Raul Medza, who's not a chaser, but he started back in 16th. He's worked his way up to 9th. So some big moves from a lot of guys here early on.
You wonder how much practice Chris Raul Medza had outside of the practice session, because he actually hopped in maybe about 3 minutes prior to us going green to be able to try and get in there and lay down a lap time for a qualifying lap, and actually didn't even get around to complete one. So very impressive, the fact that just at least here in the practice session that was provided prior to this race, he didn't get any practice time, and he's up here inside the top 10.
Sometimes that's the best approach you can take to a weekend, Seth. If you're not confident going into some place, you're really unsure how it's going to go. Sometimes it's best to just go out there and wing it, especially if you're only racing for wins, which he is. So I've done that a couple of times, and it's worked out well. You don't get in your own head about thinking about how slow you might feel. You just go out there and you race, and sometimes you surprise yourself.
Here's Chris Noblet in the 17. Now Noblet seems to be struggling a little bit here tonight. Back in the 14th position. He comes into this race 3rd of the playoff contenders. Had a very nice start to his playoffs last week at Chicagoland, but I don't know if this is necessarily strategy or not, as he's running anywhere from half a second to about 7/10 slower than a lot of the guys up inside of the top 10.
Yeah, it's he hasn't really made a lot of gains, as you said. He started 14th, and he's currently scored 14th there. As he overtakes, I'm not sure who he jumped ahead of there. It looks like it was the 14th of Chris Johnson. But yeah, it's you don't want to fall too far behind, because like you said, he's 20 seconds behind race leader, which is about a half a lap. You're looking at about maybe a lap time of about 30 seconds-ish. We're looking in comparison to where the leader is. He's halfway down the back straightaway right now, entering turn 3, and Chris Noblet is just now entering turn 1. So just about a half lap behind the leader, and he definitely wants to get a move on.
We saw moments ago Chris Corveau bringing the number 7 Chris Cola machine to pit road. I believe that was a regularly scheduled stop for him. Chris Newman in the 90 just went a lap down, and we just saw an exchange for second. And now the highest running playoff driver on track is going to be Christopher Takis, who just made his way around Christopher Bass.
Yeah, he was slowly making his charge there, slowly reeling in Chris Bass. Saved his tires a little bit better there on that first run, and as you said, gets around him for second. Chris Takis, not really a name that we've said a lot in the latter half of this regular season, but he locked himself into the postseason there pretty early, but didn't really... I don't want to say he didn't show up, but he wasn't up there leading a lot of laps in the latter half of the regular season, and it's good to see him showing some more speed here now that we're down in the nitty-gritty here with the first elimination race of our chase.
Yeah, and I can remember, too, quite a number of races in the first half of the regular season where he'd be running well but run into some hard luck, maybe a pit road miscue or get involved in a wreck that really wasn't of his making. So nice to see him having a good run here, and with Takis coming into this race, he is behind the cut line, 12th in the standings. If he were to get up there, take this race lead away from Chris Gossett and go to victory lane, he would advance into the next round of the playoffs.
Yeah, he's as as you said, he's 12th out of the cut line there. 91 points is what the cut line's at. He's at 69 points after last weekend's race at Chicagoland. So a little bit of a mountain there for him to climb. Obviously being the highest chaser right now is very helpful. Chris Bass is our chase leader right now. So he's running in a good spot, but I think that far back you're looking at a must-win scenario here.
Christopher Reese must have heard me talking about him falling back, because he's now picked up a couple of spots and moved back up to 9th place. The guy that's now starting to drift back is the U.S. Chris Chevrolet of Christopher Lawrence, who came into this race just behind that cutoff line, 9th in the playoff standings.
And like you touched on too, he's got to have a decent day here, Seth, because as we talked about, Hubka is not here in this race. He is sitting on the chase cutoff line in P8 in points. Chris Lawrence right behind him in 9th. So this isn't one of those races where he could just show up to and know that he's going to make it in. He's still got to finish decently well here, because he's got Chris Corveau, who is also in this race, currently scored 2 laps down though in 18th, breathing right down his neck just by a point. So still needs to have a good day in that 01 machine.
Christopher Williams is going to hit pit lane here, coming to the completion of lap 40. Like this is a regularly scheduled stop for the 09. And I'm looking in terms of like lap times here. You know, we were talking about the fact that the difference between current laps to laps they ran at the prior, right now there's about maybe 2.8, maybe 3 seconds to be gained on fresher tires. But the problem for Chris Bertakis is he's got to make up 10 seconds on the 43.
Yeah, definitely. And he's got to get a move on, and that's hard to do on old rubber like he is. So it's going to come down to pit strategy here. I think if I'm Takis, I stay out as long as Gossett stays out, and then maybe pits a lap after. Just because you want to stay on relatively the same strategy as he does, because you want to see if you can rely on your own individual pace to get yourself up there and see if he can catch our race leader.
Christopher Landy on pit road, the 71 Chris by Ford, and of course you can see that damage there on the right side he sustained after we saw Chris Edwards get up into the wall and then bounce down into him. Battle right now, best battle is going to be 3rd place, but just changed hands. Chris Otto continuing to march his way towards the front. He's bringing Chris Alonzo King in that 80 machine along with him. Otto got around Chris Bass for 3rd. Now King looking for 4th. Actually, check that. King's coming to pit road.
If I'm Chris Bass here, Seth, I'd start thinking about heading to pit road here pretty shortly, because his lap times are dropping off and he's slowly following down the running order here. Remember we saw him running pretty comfortably up there in 2nd, and then ever since Chris Takis got around him and threw some dirty air on his nose, he's starting to really drop down through the order. So I'd start looking towards that pit entry, start looking at my marks, and start thinking about coming to pit road here in the next couple laps. Looks like he might be doing that here this time. Yep, he's coming in now. So I think that's a good call from that 97 machine. Get to pit road before you lose too many more spots.
So a couple of drivers have a bit of a struggle getting onto the apron to head for the pit road entrance, and I would have to assume that one thing that plays a huge factor into that is the fact there's not much tire rubber underneath them to be able to hold that rear end down to the racetrack.
Oh, and hitting that apron, Seth, it feels like you're hitting a darn wall. It's such an aggressive change from the racing surface down to the apron. And so it's so tricky to get that car slowed down and make that transition smoothly, because if you come in there too hot, if you're hard on the brakes trying to get down to pit road speed and you transition from banking to flat surface on the apron, that car will snap around pretty quick on you. So it's a pretty harsh adjustment from that banking down to the apron.
Saw Meza on pit road, the 14 of Johnson hitting pit road this time by, and you can see right here just the difference of tires, how quickly the 71 of Landy, who's right now 3 laps down, is able to get up to the outside and bypass our race leader, Gossett.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a perfect example of just the difference in speed that the tires can carry over, because Christopher Landy we haven't really seen with a lot of speed here this afternoon. And as you see there, Tommy Gossett now coming to pit road, our race leader. pretty comfortable gap he comes in with as well, about 10.5 seconds he's going to come down to pit road with.
Pack is going to do the same, and you talked about that transition from the banking to the apron. We get a good look at that on board of the National Chris Chevrolet.
A lot of guys coming in this time, just waiting, running it out of, essentially running it out of fuel, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad call. It's what I would do if I was running up near the front, and mainly because strategy really isn't my strong suit. I do best whenever I'd say, okay, I'll just run the car out of fuel, then come to pit road, and then I can make it to the end. We're good. But when you're further back, you obviously want to pay a little bit of strategies here, see if you can't gain yourself a spot or two throughout the course of the run.
Jonathan Leach and Chris Bowler were also on pit road, coming in behind the two leaders. New race leader is Chris Otto, who just based on what we saw there on that first run, definitely looks like he is the one that has mastered being able to save his tires, because he was making a lot of forward progress in the latter half of that green flag run.
Yeah, he's really making his way up through the field, as you said there, and should be coming to pit road this time, and indeed he does. But going the distance, going to work lap 49 before he comes into pit road. So a good first opening run. He'll be really happy with that. It's just a matter of can he maintain the track position he made up under green during this green flag stop. We'll see. But a very impressive start to his day.
Chris Roberge is in pit road. That leaves one more driver that's yet to pit. That's going to be the 17 of Chris Noblet. Noblet right now has been out there for 50 laps on his set of tires. Now, there's no possible way that these drivers can make it one stop. They're going to have to make two stops, but maybe the thought process here for Chris Noblet is if we get to that second round of pit stops, he's going to have anywhere from maybe 3 to 8 lap fresher tires than everybody else heading to the checkered flag.
Yeah, and very slow coming to pit road there. That I was gonna credit him with how good of a job he did to keep him out there for that long, but he was so slow coming to pit road, Seth. I gotta think that's gonna cost him a ton of time. He was slowing down and changing down into third well before he was at even the middle of the corner. So a very slow entry for Noblet. We'll see how that works out for him. But and he slid his box too. He's not going to be thrilled about that. So what I was going to say though is he can stretch his second stint. He made his first stop on lap 50 as we're seeing right now, but he could stretch that second stop to lap 100, and then he's got only 34 laps to just motor on by, and maybe that could have been one of the winning strategies. I don't know, but he's not really executed it all that well, unfortunately. So we'll see how that cycles out.
Take a look at our top three now. Gossett back to the lead, but how about Christopher Williams? He was one of the first leaders to come down pit road. He pitted about 7 laps before we saw Gossett and Takis eventually come to pit lane, but look at all the time he gained with that short pitting. Now up to that second spot, currently 6 seconds behind Gossett. Yeah,
a lot of speed from the looks of things and under that 09 Chevrolet. Certainly making his moves here early and taking advantage of the speed that he seems to have. But the difference in tires is what's creating that gap of 6.5 seconds right now. We'll see later on in the run when the tires kind of balance out to see what kind of gap that shrinks down to or increases to. So either way, a lot of speed shown early from that 09.
I'm not certain that Chris Otto may or may not have missed his pit stall the first go round or something, because he's back on pit road again in the 88, and this is actually an extended stop for the Nation Chris Chevrolet. So a tough break there for a driver that looked like he was going to be maybe one of the best cars on the long run.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just going back real quick. It was, as you said, an extended stop. It looks like he could be serving a penalty. Might have been caught speeding on pit road. See him pulling away now. He's down a lap. He's just lost the second lap. So, a really tough break for him. The good news is he does have a little bit of insurance, Seth, being that he's 5th in points right now, 98 points on the season. So he's well above that cut line, but definitely he's going to have some work cut out for him whenever we start the next round. Yeah,
right now, based off of the calculations I've got, unless a driver wins their way into the playoffs that's behind the cutoff line, everybody from Christopher Reese on up is pretty well locked in. Reese, Jones, Otto, Personette, Noblet, Roberge, and Bass. So right now it's really that final playoff position that's on the line here for the drivers trying to advance to the round of 8.
Yeah, and the more I look at it, the more I keep thinking to myself that maybe pointing your way in is just not something that's going to be possible with just the gap that it is between 8th and 9th in points. Again, it helps that Chris Hubka is not here. It plays into the aid of Lawrence and Corveau and even Landy, honestly, that he's not here. But I for everybody else that's out, I think the odds of them making it in without a win are very, very slim the more I look at this the standings.
Yeah, Takas right now looks like maybe the only driver that has a chance of maybe winning his way in based on where he is in the point standings. A lot of the other drivers, like Chris Edwards, has already taken his car behind the wall. Chris Newman is 2 laps down, so doesn't look like they're going to have a shot of winning their way into the playoffs. So right now it's really all down to where this 46 car finishes as to whether Hubka and the 5 will be in the playoffs next week at Rockingham or not.
Yeah, he's as you said, highest running chaser by he's got a spot gap over Chris Bass, but the next chaser behind him who would really benefit from a good point stake. Remember, Chris Bass is our point leader, so the next guy behind him would be Chris Lawrence, who does need a good day and is having one right now. He's top 5 right now, so he's got the best shot of making it into the top 8, provided Takas doesn't win without getting a win, if that makes sense.
It does, and right now Lawrence, as he says, in that 5th position. We saw some good early run speed out of that car on the first run just before the pit stops, but then that car seemed to really fade the longer and longer we got into a run. You gotta wonder as well, some of these guys that we saw fading back the longer that run went on, we're seeing the nighttime conditions start to creep in now. Sun's starting to set behind the hills. The sunset is glowing out there just off of 3 and 4, so now as the track's going to start cooling down, those guys that struggled early on, were they just basically preparing themselves for the nighttime conditions?
Could have been. They could have run some tests here throughout the week that during the night, and compared to what they were doing in practice here just before this race went green. So maybe they've seen that they're running faster lap times, more consistent lap times at night, and maybe that's what they're hanging on to. But the key with that is this race has stayed green ever since we dropped the green flag 60 laps ago. So you've got to stay on the lead lap. You got to maintain a decent gap to the guys you're racing and the race leader if you want to make that call and put it into effect whenever this race gets covered up by darkness.
That's a great point too, because if we end up having some late race restarts, if you're on the lead lap, you get to start up there with all the rest of the lead lap cars. But if you have to rely on a free pass, you're going to be starting shotgun on the field behind all the lap machines as well. And as we're looking at this battle here between Christopher Reese and Chris Jonathan Leach, this is for 8th place. These two guys are the next to last drivers on the lead lap. Chris Bowler, the 82, 10th place. He's the last car right now on the same lap as the leaders.
Yeah, and that's kind of you kind of want to use him as maybe a pick. You gotta if you're on the lead lap and you're one of those guys playing that strategy, kind of just riding until this race descends into darkness. You use the 82 as a pick. Okay, that's my interval, that's my gap. You pull him up on the relative, see where he's at, and the leader is right there, about to put him a lap down, and then from there, it's Chris Jonathan Leach, who's not a chaser, but he's battling with one, and that 62 machine actually just put him behind him there for 9th. So it's always a risky play whenever that's what you feel you're set up for.
Now Christopher Williams has fallen back to the 4th position now, as he's got anywhere from a 4 to 6 lap difference on his tires as opposed to the 3 that are ahead of him now, Gossett, Takas, and Bass. But one thing I was just looking at was the fact that a lot of these drivers were on pit road somewhere between laps 46 to 48, right around the target number we were given. they could stretch it anywhere to lap 94. Some could stretch it as far as maybe lap 97. However, if we use 48 as the target lap, if any of these drivers want to try to short pit, fuel window's open when we get to lap 86.
Yeah, I think this is where you might see some of those guys that want to maybe throw in a third stop, start to try and do it. I think this is around the time, as you said, fuel window is open. This is when you see them come in and maybe do that 3-stop strategy, because if you make this a 2-stop and you stretch it, it's going to still be awfully close, Seth, coming down to that checkered flag. So if a caution comes out late, there's not going to be any guarantee that a green-white checkered is going to be an okay thing for them. Granted, if a caution comes out late, we're probably going to see everybody on pit road anyways, but it's going to be mighty close for those guys that decide to just do 2 stops, I think.
Yeah, the field's really spread out right now due to the fact we've run these first 66 laps under green flag conditions, no caution. Not without incident, however. We've had a couple of drivers get out of shape, but the incidents have taken place usually down on the apron off the racing surface. This is about the best battle we've got. A group of 3, now make it 4, now make it 5, all clumped up here from Meza on back to Reese.
Yeah, this is, and all of these are for position. There's no lap traffic mixed in there, so it's a good little battle there. And for a lot of those guys like Christopher Reese especially, that's 5 spots that he can make up right there. Gossett, he's now the last car on the lead lap, so if Reese can pick his way through the field, he's got 4 guys that Gossett has to lap before him. So this is a good little group that's battling for position, and he's already got 1 by 1 there in that 01 machine of Christopher Lawrence.
So move Reese up to the 8th position, as Lawrence going to try and battle back on that outside line, but I think he's got a little bit older tires, about 4-lap older tires, so he'll have to give way to the 62. Jonathan Leach right up there. The 48 going to move to the inside of Jones. That's going to be a battle for 6th.
Trying to just see, I'm noticing that the rubbered in groove is starting to widen out just a little bit, Seth. And it seems like that the guys that have been running up at the top there during all these battles are choosing to go to the top, are starting to lay down that rubber. So I think we're really going to see that top come in whenever this track descends into complete darkness here. The thing that's going to be the variable, though, is we might, at the pace this race is going, we're like working lap 68 right now. No, 69, I'm sorry. And this is where we're blowing through this race right now. So we might not have a lot of darkness to race with. So majority of this race seems like it's going to be raced still during the twilight hours.
Yeah, we're more than halfway through this race now. No cautions, so to your point, this race has flown by, and these drivers are potentially looking at running the full 134 laps completely under green flag conditions. Right now, it's just been a runaway up here at the front of the field. Chris Gossett, you saw right there, we were just looking at what was a battle for 7th place, and that's going on maybe a little less than half a straightaway ahead of this 43-year race leader Gossett.
Yeah, if you're Chris Williams, if you're Chris Bass, Chris Takis, and you know that this big group of chasers exists, and you know how close Gossett is to putting them a lap down, you are cheering that 43 on, because should a caution come out, all you have to worry about for the next little while is each other. Because that's 1, 2, 3. That's 4 chasers right there in that group that could go a lap down here in the next few laps.
It was incredible too. You know, you look at the first 2 races of the playoffs, the first 2 races for this first round of the playoffs. You had last week Chicagoland. You have this week Homestead. Both tracks the same distance in length, 1.5 miles. But last week, everyone was all up each other's gearboxes. Here today, you know, you've got a couple of battles here through the field, but a lot of spreading out of drivers. Yeah,
and Chicagoland was, honestly, it was the one equalizer racetrack that we go to in this postseason, because up next you've got Rockingham. It's going to be very similar to that. That's a place I can't stand, by the way, just because of the way it drives. It's going to be spread out again like this. Then you go to Indianapolis, which is also going to be spread out. And then we end the season finale at Phoenix, which is spin off of 4.
And it's Meza.
That's going to bring out our first yellow there, Seth.
Yes, it is. Oh, boy. Right on the front straightaway, too. It's a wonder we didn't have anybody else collected up in that, as the 37 came from the inside all the way up the outside wall.
Yeah, he got, not sure what started that contact. Might have had a little bit of help from the 48.
We were focused on that group of cars, because that was really where the best battling was, about 3-4 cars all in the same vicinity.
Yeah, that's a few chasers just sneaking by that. Almost had disaster strike for them. Like I said, they're looking at it, a little bit of help from that 48, but it honestly didn't look intentional. I think it was a case of, whoa, I'm getting tight, I better check up, and the guy behind him didn't expect it and kind of just ran over him there.
Yeah, did the slower machine, maybe the 7 of Chris Corvo, maybe play a factor into that? Because it almost looked like the 37 was maybe trying to move down just a little bit to make sure he gave that 7 some room off of corner exit.
I think that's exactly what happened, and it also caused Meza to check up because he didn't want to wash up into him. Wasn't sure if he was going to get cleared of him before he cleared the corner. So, definitely the slow machine of the 7 played a part in that. Just wasn't expecting the checkup was the 48, and man, Corvo almost got clipped from that 37 there.
Happiest driver in the field right now has got to be the 82 of Chris Bowler, as he was the first car 1 lap down. He will be the recipient of the free pass, which will have 9 drivers on the lead lap. We did have 10 prior to that caution coming out, but 37 of Chris Raul Meza is currently on pit road getting damage repaired and dropped off the lead lap, as it took him a little bit of time to get that 37 car rewrited and headed back in the right direction.
So I'm not so sure if our race leader pit there, Seth.
Nobody of our top 3 have pit. Gossett, Bass, and Williams have stayed out. Christopher Takis was the first one to pit road. He's going to be restarting in 4th, and I believe Chris Bowler, who's right now scored in 5th, is going to have to come to pit road this time around since he was the lucky dog driver. But yeah, to your point, top 3 did not pit under this caution.
That's an interesting call because there's quite a few laps on the tires there on that 40 on all of our top 3 rather. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. They
can't make it on fuel. We know that, but I would think that they're giving up a lot of speed and a lot of track position to the other drivers behind him, who also are going to have to pit at least one more time.
Yeah, I don't know if there's some sort of maybe maybe an undercut kind of thing where you let these guys blow by you here on the restart, because that is what's going to happen. The new tires are going to just eat the old tires up for dinner. So maybe you let them blow by on this restart, and then under the cycle of the green flag stops, you catch them back and retake your lead down. I don't know.
If that's the strategy he's going with, there's a counter strategy for a lot of these guys. Like take, for instance, Christopher Takis. Actually, should just bring up that Chris Bass actually just came to pit road, as did Chris B. Williams. So Goss is the only one out there on old tires, 28 lap old tires. Everybody else on the lead lap behind him has been to pit road under this caution period.
Yeah, and I'm just checking to make sure that we didn't just miss something, but he didn't come to pit road or wasn't on pit road at the time of caution, and he wasn't. So he has not come in. He has not pit at any point since we last saw him on pit road under green and back on lap 48. So really curious as to what the strategy is here.
Yeah, I mean, make no mistake, he's got a fast race car. He's proved it all night, but we even saw him dropping off 2 seconds from his fastest lap about 25 laps into that first green flag run. So he's giving up technically about 2.5 seconds to everybody else behind him. And you brought up the possible strategy of trying to, undercut these guys, come to pit road when the fuel window is open, but depending on how much these guys, if they get around him, gap him, they could then come to pit road on the same lap and basically preserve the margin they had gained here when we go back green.
Yeah, I just got to think that there's some sort of long run, like these thinking long run game here that we just aren't cluing into, and that's the only thing I can think of, because the amount of time he's going to lose on this restart is going to be just insane. So, well, I don't know. I'm ready to be schooled. I'm ready to be taught a lesson in strategy. I'm excited to see how this plays out.
It may all be revealed when we get to the end of this race, as Gossett will be the one to lead us back to green. Takis will line up to his outside in second. Christopher Reese and Chris Jones, that's going to be row 2, followed by Christopher Lawrence and Chris Jonathan Leach. That's 5th and 6th. The rest of the drivers on the lead lap, 9 of them in total, are going to be Christopher Williams, Chris Bass, and Chris Bowler. One driver took the wave around under that caution. That was Chris Newman. He went from 4 to now 3 laps down. And the 37 of Chris Meza still on pit road. Actually, I think he just left his pit stall, spent a little under 4 minutes getting damage repaired. Was having such a great run, but now finds himself 4 laps down, last car running in 17th.
Seth, another thing I find interesting, again, I'm just drawing on personal experience here. In the league race I was in last weekend, the race leader always seemed to take the top. In this situation, he's taken the bottom here, and Tommy Gossett is going to be restarting on the bottom. So that's also going to be interesting. Should we have a few more yellows to see what the leader decides to do, whether or not they want to restart on the top or the bottom?
Especially with the fact he's got the older tires, you'd think he'd want the top line to be able to arc it down into the corner. My assumption is if he entered into turn 1 on the inside line, that car is going to push up quite a bit.
Right. Yeah, that would be my guess too, but all shall be revealed.
Well, Gossett up through the gears, saw maybe a little bit of tire spin there as he gets us back underway. Opens about a car length and a half over Takis going into turn 1.
Yeah, I got a good launch, but I think this is where we're going to see the new tires come in, because here comes Takis working the top. He's going to get that drive off.
And Gossett realizes the situation. You see, he didn't even move up to throw a block. There's a huge difference in speed between the tires he's got and the tires that Takis just received.
So a big move, big change in fortune there for Chris Takis. He's definitely been the fastest of the chasers right now. So this is a good change in fortune for him right now. Gets by to lead that lap, and that's our first lead change of the afternoon here, Seth, under green, that is, or at speed rather. We obviously saw the lead change hands during the green flag stops, but in terms of on-track passes made for the lead, that was the first one, and Takis is going to be able to build that gap a little bit here.
But the guy that's back here that's saying no, seeing that 46 go to the front, is the 0-1 of Christopher Lawrence, because with Takis out in front, that takes away Lawrence's chance of pointing his way into the round of 8.
Yeah, because remember, Takis is lower than Lawrence in points, so a win would jump him over the 0-1 and lock him into the top 8, which, like you said, essentially would bump both Hubka and Lawrence out of the top 8.
Now, we saw Chris Bass come to pit road, I think it was 2 laps to green. Gave up a lot of track position to do so, but I almost wonder if he might have come down as late as he did to see if he could stretch a little bit further. He's not even really charging his way up to the front. Is this 97 maybe thinking about trying to make it the rest of the way on fuel?
It's possible, yeah, because the caution laps help with that, and I think the fact that there's only 9 cars on the lead lap plays into that factor as well. So we could see him stretch it out, and maybe he just learned his lesson from last time. You know, he got off to a good start. He's sitting comfortably in second, and then all of a sudden he got ran down and caught and passed by 3 or 4 different cars before he came to pit road. So maybe he's just backing up his pace a little bit just to try and save those tires a little bit better as well.
Well, he also comes into this race the playoff points leader. Huge gap back to that cutoff line, so he knows he's advancing, so why not try something a little bit different?
Yeah, exactly. You maybe play that strategy card for a little bit later in the season. There's no other place that we're going to go to that is going to be exactly like Homestead, but just play some sort of strategy and kind of shoot for the moon, because as he said, he is as good as locked in the next round. So
43 has fallen all the way back to the 8th position in Gossett. And that is almost back to the last car on the lead lap, as Chris Bowler just about 0.8 of a second behind him, about to get up there and take that 8th position. So this strategy, whatever it is, at least for the moment, has not panned out for Gossett. But again, there's still 50 laps to go as Takis will hit the line. We have not necessarily seen what the end result of this plan is for the 43 car. And a lot of these other guys up here quite possibly can't make it on fuel either.
Right. Yeah, and I think we're going to have to wait another 30, 40 laps to see how that long-term strategy will play out. Obviously, I think it should a caution come out uh, between now and the next 10 laps and everybody comes to pit road. If you're Gossett, you better come to pit road too, because by then I think everybody would be good to the end, so we wouldn't see any more green flag stops. So at this point in time, there's guaranteed to be another green flag stop. I would think in about 10, 15 laps that interval gets erased.
Gotta ask you, Logan, because you said you've got this prior experience at this racetrack. Do you see it at all possible to save 11 laps of fuel in a 60-lap stint?
It's hard. It's really hard because that's a lot of time spent not on the throttle. That's a lot of lifting and coasting. This track's not very big, Seth, so that making it to the end all goes up in smoke if you lose a lap, even though you gain it back under green, because you want to make sure you maintain kind of a minimum speed just to make sure that you're keeping that gap to where it needs to be for it to work out when everybody else comes in the pit road. Because it's no point in doing it whenever you're going to get passed back by all the guys with fresh tires immediately after the stop cycle through. So it's a risky strategy.
Well, if Chris Bass is indeed trying to make it to the checkers on what he's got in the tank, that is the mountain he's going to have to try and climb, as the gap for the lead beginning to chip away just a little bit. Christopher Takas had himself about a second and a half back to Christopher Reese. It's now almost down to a second.
Yeah, and Christopher Reese is a guy that we saw at the beginning of this race kind of running back half of the field. Now all of a sudden he's up there showing some speed in second. So a good change in fortune for him. And with him, he's bringing Chris Jones, who's running up in third. Best we've seen him run all day as well.
Yeah, that Chris Spice number 33 with Chris Jones' face right there on the front. Highest
Beautiful.
we've seen him run today. You've got Jonathan Leach, Chris Jonathan Leach, the 48 right behind him as well. And right now you've got 3 playoff contenders up there inside of the top 3.
Another guy as well, probably the guy we've been focusing on the most is Chris Lawrence, because of the fact that he could points his way into this top 8 to get into the next round. Still holding strong there in 5th, but I think at that point, as long as Takas leads, that's just not good enough. You got to go up there and take it yourself. Actually, Chris Bass, who we thought might be trying to make it to the end, is now going to go and put him down into 6th, and Bass is going to move up in the 5th. So I think that answers our question on whether or not he's going to try and make it to the end. He's running pretty hard right now.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think that he is in save mode anymore. I was kind of surprised because I thought with his fresh tires we'd see him charge to the front sooner, but I think you brought the point up, and you may have hit the nail right on the head. He was kind of settling in, waiting for the long run to happen, and then start to cut his way up back towards the front.
It's also just so hard to do with this new package, Seth. You know, there's so much more with the low downforce or the high downforce and low top speeds. You know, it's so hard for these guys to really make that work, because it's just the racing is so much closer, and the time spent off the throttle is so much smaller than what it used to be back in the day. So it's just such a hard thing to do now, even with this new package.
A couple of drivers that have struggled today, and a lot of it is in translation to how they approach the first round of green flag pit stops. Drivers that came in 2nd and 3rd in the playoff points here tonight. Chris Roberge right now in the lucky dog position, but a lap down in 10th. Chris Noblet in the 17. We saw just how cautious he was coming onto pit lane for his green flag stop. He's also a lap down in the 11th position. I mean, both these drivers, at least with being out where they are going to, it looks like, easily advance into the next round of the playoffs, but not quite, I think, in the way that they were hoping to.
Yeah, and definitely you like to start the next round with a bang, with a good finish. It's not one of those things where you just want to kind of almost sneak your way in with an okay finish. You want to go out there and you want to start it off strong by ending the first round strong. So definitely not going to be the day that they want to have, but at this point in time in the season, you'll kind of take whatever you can get.
1 second even that time down the back straightaway was the gap from Takas back to Christopher Reese. And looking right now in terms of lap times as well, Reese has been a tick quicker every single lap. anywhere from about 3 to 4 tenths, or 3 to 4 100ths, I should say, faster, little by little chipping away. Another driver that obviously was looking to have a better run here, going to be advancing into the next round. Chris Otto in the 88. He is 3 laps down, the 14th position. We've got 16 cars still running, 9 of them on the lead lap. We have 3 drivers out of the race. We saw the 14 of Chris David Johnson on pit road. He has since brought his machine to the garage area, joining Chris Alonso King and Chris Edwards.
One thing that I'd also like to point out too, Seth, is there's kind of a big equalizer thrown into the mix, and that is the absence again of Christopher Tate. He's been so dominant throughout the course of the regular season, and with his absence here in the rest of the season, it's really kind of blown these races wide open.
Certainly has, but Christopher Tack is taking up the National Chris mantle, if you will, having his Chevrolet out in front in this one. And yeah, you're right, a huge player gone, so to speak, with Christopher Tate not able to finish out the rest of the playoffs here in contention. Undoubtedly was one of the favorites to at least move on to the Final Four, if not win the whole thing.
Starting to see that gap really close up there between the 46 and the 62. Christopher Reese showing some good speed here. He's creating a gap to the 48 and closing the gap to the 46. We haven't seen Christopher Reese win yet this season, so this could be a huge afternoon for him here, as he's showing some real speed right now.
Yeah, showed a lot of speed last week at Chicagoland. We talked about the incident between himself and Chris Gossett. They were running second and third at the time, so he was very much in the conversation for that checkered flag last week. And another gap I'm starting to see close up also, Chris Bass. He's only about a second and 8 tenths behind the top 2, behind the race leader, and he's laying down the fastest laps here.
Yeah, he got around that 48, and all of a sudden he did chip away at that lead. So the slow restart that he had is obviously paying dividends, because, as you said, he's the fastest car on the racetrack right now. Really chipping away at that second place gap. It still stayed at 1.8, but it got to a smaller 1.8 that last time by. Chris Tack is struggling with some lap traffic here, in the 17 of Chris Noblet. So this is only helping that 62 right now.
Noblet was just on pit road for his final stop of the evening, and we now see the 43 of Chris Gossett on pit lane. He dropped all the way back to last car on the lead lap, 9th position, after staying out on those about 25 lap older tires than everybody else. Gave up a lot of track position. We'll see if this was part of the plan, as he's now on pit road with 36 to go. The window's open for all the rest of these drivers to come to pit lane and make it the rest of the way, because all these guys, at least for the moment, are looking like they're going to be anywhere 11 to 12 laps short of making it to the finish on fuel.
Yeah, I'm going to be curious to see how the strategies differ and who decides to do what. I'm watching Christopher Reese here to see what kind of lines he's running in comparison to Takis. It looks to be pretty similar, maybe a little bit lower in 3 and 4 than he is, but through 1 and 2, they're about running in each other's tire tracks. Takis goes a little bit higher in 1 and 2. Christopher Reese going to dive down to the bottom, see who gets the run off there. It looks like that Reese has just got the advantage in terms of tires. He's done a better job of taking care of those right side tires, and he's just flat out faster right now.
Right now, these drivers can go about another 23 to 24 laps before they'd have to come to pit road for their final pit stop. But with seeing how fast the 43 of Gossett has been in the early stages of this race, I think with him on pit road now, a lot of these guys back here really should consider coming to pit road now. They don't want him to gain as much time as he would if they stay out for another 20 laps.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, but I'm just curious to see what they decide to do, because obviously the later you stay out, the later into the race you're going to have fresh tires, so you're going to be able to drive hard later in the race than the guy who pits earlier. So you got to find that happy medium here. We're right now at about 32 laps to go. Maybe see around lap with 27 to go, maybe we'll see these guys hit pit road, as we got a good battle for the lead right now between the 62 and the 46. He keeps trying it on that inside, but you see, even with old tires, that top just rolls so much better off the corner, and it's given the advantage to the 46 right now.
Takis taking the preferred line into the corner, forcing Reese to do something different, not only to try and get a run to the inside, but also to get some clean air to the nose of that machine as well, so he doesn't push up off the corner.
Well, I think if I'm Reese, what I do, he's doing it right here, is you enter the corner a little bit high and exit a little bit low. That's what he did there. It's going to close that gap just a little bit. Oh, maybe a little bit of a slide off the corner, pushed up a little bit. But I think you do it again here in 3 and 4. You enter a little bit higher, maybe follow the 46 in, and then arc it down on exit. There you go. Can't quite get back to the gas, though, to get that run off.
If it were another situation, if I were Reese, I'd maybe just kind of ride it out and wait until you guys are going to make your pit stop, because he's clearly been faster than Takis, but he can't wait because Chris Bass is reeling in these top 2, and he's been a 10th quicker than these guys the last 10 laps or so.
I was just going to say that Chris Reese he's got to go, because otherwise he's going to get passed by Bass, and it's going to be 2 birds with 1 stone for Bass. He's going to get by both these guys, and he's going to go have himself a lead. See Reese looking to the inside again and looking out at the front of the 97. That's exactly what he wants to see them running side by side, and maybe taking a little bit of mental notes, see what Reese is doing wrong, and maybe try and do it better himself. See what's working for Reese, what isn't working for him, and use that whenever he gets up to the 2 of them to get by them both quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that Reese has been able to run down Takis, but he hasn't been able to pass him. Maybe the same story when the 97 eventually gets up here.
You see Reese just really throwing it in hard, and it's doing nothing but hurting because he can't keep the car down there. He's got to be a little bit smoother on entry and really use the exit of the corner to be what allows him to complete the pass, or at least get the pass set up, enter the corner side by side with Takis.
The highest Reese has run all night long. Takis and Bass have spent most of the day up inside of the top 3, but they spent the first half of this race trying to chase down the 43 of Chris Gossett, who right now is 1 lap down back in the 10th position, kind of waiting to see what's going to happen when these pit stops cycle around. Chris Jones, the 33, is now on pit road. We had Christopher Williams in pit road 4 laps ago.
Such a good battle here up at the top. You can now officially throw a blanket over these top 3, but Takis is doing such a good job of forcing Reese to adjust his line in order to get by Takis. It's not a battle for Takis to have to adjust his line to be able to fight off Chris Reese. Chris Reese is the one that's having to adjust his line to get around Takis, and Takis is just staying glued to that middle groove right now. He pushes up a little bit. That could be the window Reese needs, but he just doesn't have the drive offset.
And, it's a question of who wants it more. You've got Reese, who's right now 21 points to the good coming into this race, run up there in 2nd place, easily would advance into the round of 4. Chris Bass basically came into this race with no worries, knowing he was going to advance, but Takis, on the other hand, is in a must-win situation to advance into the round of 8. So if you're kind of looking to see who wants this victory the most, I think that 46 jumps to the top of the list.
Yeah, and he's doing a good job of holding them off. You see the 62, he made it stick to the inside there, but again, it's just that top pulls so much better. So much better, especially off of turn 4 than that inside does, because your car just tracks up the racetrack. It's just a little, Reese has almost got it there. He's got a good run off, but it's just that wash up you see right there that just bleeds all that speed, and it's the advantage to the 46.
Look at that 09 right there. That is the Christopher Williams machine, who's coming around to unlap himself. Woo, blinking there in between the leaders. That's a little scary.
That's that might be a little bit of an advantage there to the 40 or to the 62. You see the 46 trying to get a little bit of a tow from the 09 because it did cost him some time. See Bass using the top side. Whoa, here comes more lap traffic, but here comes the 62. He's finally going to get the job. Going to be side by side. I still think it's the advantage to the 46 because he's got that top side. We'll see how the 62 approaches this corner here. A little bit of a slide job maybe, and it's going to be Takis to pit road.
46 to pit road, and he almost got run over by the 7 of Corbeau. Oh, Takis just hit the pit wall. Hit the water barrel.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. And that's his playoff hopes right there.
Yep, that's his season done and over with. That's not a mistake he needed to make.
He made a late call to come to pit road. It took a number of guys behind him by surprise, and maybe that late call. He just wasn't able to turn it far enough left to avoid that wall. He came in with a lot of speed.
Seth, from middle of 3 and 4 all the way down to that pit wall, there was so much indecision from that 46. As he got passed by the 62 and made a call, okay, I'm coming in. But obviously it caught the 7 off guard, who touched him. There was contact between the 7 and the 46. And after that contact it made, it almost looks like Takis didn't want to come. It's like, okay, that blew my shot. I'm going to stay out on the lap. And it almost looks like he wasn't sold on coming to pit road after that contact was made, because he wasn't slowing down. There was no application of the brakes after that contact was made.
Yeah, it may have been like so many things that he had to think about in the span of about 3 seconds. He wanted to come to pit road. You mentioned the contact he had with the 7, so he had to make sure he didn't get run over or get spun out. Then he's got to focus back out the windshield to make sure he makes it onto pit road safely.
Yeah, just really unfortunate. Just not a smart call, I don't think, from that 46. It'd be one thing if he knew he was coming. If he knew he was coming to pit road, lift down the straightaway. You've got to give up that. You can't be side by side the lap you're coming to pit road, especially if you're on the top. You've got to put yourself in the position to safely get to the pits under green, and he just didn't do that, and it's going to cost him his season here. So unfortunate.
Bass is on pit road. He is pretty much the last of our drivers on the lead lap that need to complete this pit stop. And this is going to turn the race lead over, I do believe, to the 09 of Christopher Williams. But the problem for him is he's got fresh tires behind him and Chris Jones in the 33. And then you've got the 43 of Chris Gossett back there, who will, looks like, cycle around to the 3rd position. So right now, the advantage looks like it could be to the 33 of Jones as far as tires, depending on how much of a gap they have over Christopher Reitz in the 62.
Got a spinner down off the exit of 2. That's the 71. Is that? Wow, I'm shocked that brought out the yellow, but that's what it's for. Christopher Landy.
Caution's going to come out, and a couple of drivers are really going to get saved by this yellow, namely the 98 of Chris Roberge, who was a lap down prior to the cycle of pit stops, decided to stay out, got back on the lead lap. So we're going to have, it looks like, 11 cars on the lead lap here when we go back green, as Chris Noblet, I believe, will get the free pass.
And, well, if there's anyone that helps, it's going to be the 43 of Gossett.
Yes, absolutely.
He cycled out, and he's currently scored in 3rd right now, but I don't think that I don't think we're going to get the answer to our question of whether or not that strategy is going to work, because, we see him on the access road there to come into the pit. So he's going to top off on fuel and get some fresh tires on there. But I would have been very curious to see how that strategy would have played out for him, but should see a pretty busy pit road here, Seth.
Yeah, I think at least our top 3 will be on pit road, as 14 laps on Williams' tires, 9 on Jones, and Gossett, I think, had about 7 laps on his tires. And no, it is going to be the 43 to pit road, but the 09 and the 33, they're going to stay out.
Interesting. From the 33 and the 09, their last pit stop actually was not long ago, was lap 106. So they've only got about 10 laps on their tires. So majority of these guys stayed out. Which I'm shocked about. I'm actually not shocked that the 97 stayed out, because he was just on pit road before the caution came out. So Chris Bash has the freshest tires on the racetrack of the guys that pitted under green. So not surprised that he stayed out. But the rest of these guys, I'm curious to see how that's going to play out for him, because there will be a disadvantage. But I think it's a big enough group of cars behind them that stayed out that it might not hurt them.
Yeah, Gossett, as well as Roberge and Takis, were the only 3 drivers that came to pit road here when the pits were open. They're going to be right now restarting back in 8th, 9th, and 10th. We're going to be getting this restart somewhere around maybe 15 laps to go. Is that enough time for the 43 to work his way back to the front here?
Well, with the speed he's shown, I think it is. But I don't know. It's tough, because it's pretty one lane on these restarts, Seth. It's there's not a lot of grooves to work with on these restarts. You can make the outside roll, but you make it roll off the corner rather. But it'll be interesting. I think he's, of all the cars to do it, I think he's got the best chance. So it's going to be wild nonetheless.
So Williams looks like he's going to be the leader when we go back green. Chris Jones in second. 16 laps on the tires of the 09, 11 laps on the tires of the 33. And then to your point, a number of these guys back here, Reese, Bass, Lawrence, Leach, and Bowler, they had all been to pit road about either 3 to 6 laps prior to the caution coming out, so not a whole lot of wear on their tires. And then you've got those guys we're going to have to keep an eye on, see if they can fight their way up there to the front. Gossett, Roberge, Takas there in that 46. I don't know just how much speed that front end damage he sustained from the beginning of the pit wall there, trying to come to pit lane. That whole hood is ripped off the 46 machine, but he's still on the lead lap in that 10th position.
Yeah, but I think his hopes, unless something huge happens on this restart, I think his hopes of making it into the round of 8 are pretty much dashed with that critical error that he made there under green. So really unfortunate. There's not going to be a lot of speed left in that machine, I don't think. So he's pretty much thrown out of the picture, and that's a huge sigh of relief, Seth, for Christopher Lawrence.
Definitely is. I mean, now the question for Lawrence is, you know, his fate is now in his own hands since Takas is somewhat out of the picture, because Lawrence had to make up, coming into this race, had to make up 17 points on Chris Hubka. I don't think at this point he led a lap, so he doesn't have a bonus point to lean on there. Right now, with the 19 cars that were in the field here today, he's going to have to finish, I believe, at least in the second position, maybe third, to be the one that advances in and knock Hubka out.
Yeah, and one thing we can't forget about, too, in these playoff races, race points are worth double than what they were in the regular season. So which I had actually forgotten about until just a lap ago. I looked over and I saw, oh, by the way, race points are worth double. So
well, that changes everything.
Exactly. Yeah. So
he's just got to finish on the lead lap then, if you're Lawrence.
Yep. Exactly. So and that's huge for him, but it could also be there. I still don't think Takas has a chance of pointing his way in again, unless something big happens on this restart. He's running 11th right now. I don't think he's going to have the speed to finish much higher than that. Should finish on the lead lap here. Next car behind him for position would be 2 laps down in Chris Otto. I think Lawrence is our big focus here in terms of the guys outside looking in.
Yeah, the only other driver I can see that could maybe play spoiler is going to be rolling off in the 5th position on this restart, and that's Chris Jonathan Leach. He also was behind the cut line, but we really haven't seen him up inside of the top 5 really even in this race. So unless he's been kind of holding back some speed here for the closing stages of this race, Lawrence looks like he could be pretty well safe to advance into the round of 8. As the lights are out atop the pace car, Logan, we're going to be going back green with what looks like it's going to be 16 laps to go.
Yeah, it's going to be wild here. And one more note to the Lawrence story here. The 3 chasers he's got in front of him are all locked in, or all currently in positions to advance into the round of 8. So those guys that are ahead of him are not his worry. It's all the chasers that are behind him. He's got to keep those guys behind him and make sure he is the highest runner of the guys outside looking in.
We've got Williams, who's a non-playoff driver, trying to spoil the party for one of these playoff contenders to take a win into the round of 8. Jones, Reese, Bass, and Lawrence all there as well. Green flag back in the air. 15 to go tonight at Homestead.
One of the most bunched up restarts we've seen here out of the 2 that we've had already, or rather the start and the 1 restart that we've had. Oh, there's contact in 1. It's Tommy Gossett and the 0-1 of Chris Lawrence. Not what he wanted. Nearly 4 wide off of turn 2.
That was Reese looking low on Williams, who's blinking in front of these leaders. Bass went all the way to the top side, and he's gone to the front.
Yeah, there goes Reese. There goes the 33, the 48, all to the inside of the 09. Williams gets shuffled out of the top 5 here in a matter of 2 corners. And it's now Bass to the lead.
Well, that was a gutsy move for them to try and split that blinking 09 4 wide off of turn 2, but somehow they all made it work. As now going to work, trying to work his way back to the front, a guy who led the first half of this race, Tommy Gossett, right now in the 5th position, looking the outside of Leach for 4th.
Yeah, there was a lot of argy-bargy from him back there on that restart, trying to get to the inside line there, try to get that track position, that car position there to put himself in a spot to make the charge. See him there looking to the inside of Jones for third.
Chris Bass out in front. He's only got 2 laps difference between his tires and the 43. He's right now got about a second between himself and what's going to possibly be a battle for second between Reese and Gossett.
Yeah, he's got to hope it's a little bit of an elongated battle there for second between Reese and Gossett, as you said, just to allow him to build that gap he's got on the lead. Gossett's pace seems to have slowed down just a little bit there since coming into third. Doesn't seem to be closing in on the 62 as much, and I believe that's because our top 3 are all the guys with the freshest tires on the racetrack right now.
And don't forget, last week, second and third place is where the 43 and the 62 were running before it all went awry in turn 1 on the final lap. They're going to find themselves in the same vicinity yet again here, closing on 10 laps to go at Homestead.
Yeah, and you would hope from a chaser standpoint that Gossett has put that contact behind him. You, as a chaser, you don't want somebody that's not in contention for a championship to seek revenge on the misfortunes that happened a week prior. But this could get interesting here as Gossett closes that gap for second.
Christopher Takis back there trying to hang on. Doesn't look like he's going to make it into the playoffs next round, but at least trying to salvage what he can as he's in a pretty spirited battle for 7th with Chris Jones. But up here again at the front, that second place battle is on. Gossett looks to the inside. Reese looks like he's going to just let him go on by.
Yep, and maybe a smart move there. You know, you're in a good spot. You're above the cutoff line. You know Gossett's maybe a little bit quicker. Just lift early, let him go on by, let him go up there and challenge for that lead, send Bass back his way, and then maybe he can fight for Bass for second.
Now we'll have to see if the 43 can start reeling in the 97, as he's got only a limited number of laps to do it. He's got about 15 miles that he's going to be able to work with to get up to Chris Bass's back bumper. That last time by, both he and Bass ran somewhat equal lap times, and the 43 had some draft.
A lot of speed right now from that 97 we're seeing on the short runs there. That gap is now less than a second to the 43 in second. It's going to come down to the wire here. There's still, like I said, a lot of speed under the hood of that 97, especially on that short run, on these short runs. So we'll see here. Maybe Gossett adjusts his line a little bit. See if he can make up that time. See, Bass enters a little bit higher into 3 than the 43 does.
Maybe the comeback of the night so far, Chris Roberge in the 98. The last time we looked, he was a lap down, battling for the free pass. The timing of that last caution helped him to get back onto the lead lap without even the need of a free pass position. And right now, he's trying to get by Chris Jonathan Leach. That'd be for 4th.
Yeah, a big rebound for him. He came in here sitting second in the points, so he's through to the round of 8. But like I said earlier, you wanna end the first round on a high note, and that's what he's doing. This could be huge for his confidence going forward, rebounding to what looks like going to be a top 5 run.
Got them pretty well bunched up back here. This is for 7th. Christopher Takis, Chris Noblet, and Chris Jones just behind them as well. Noblet's another driver that's kind of bounced back after some hardship early on. We saw him running close to the rear of the field before the first round of green flag pit stops, found himself a lap down prior to the last caution. Now up inside of the top 10 into the 7th position. Another driver that was running very well in the playoff points.
That gap is shrinking there, Seth. It's
It
down
is.
to about 6/10 here at the line, I think. Yep, 6/10, only at nearly a half second. And it closes every little bit, but I don't think it's closing fast enough for him to get. He might be able to get to him, but, I mean, catching a guy is one thing, passing him is another here. It's so hard to get passes done here at Homestead.
And, you know, just based off of the amount of time he's gained each lap, I think he would be about a car length behind the 97 coming to the checkered flag unless he's able to find something here in these final 5 laps. And I think if you're Chris Bass, based on what we saw in that last run just before that caution, Bass is going to run that second groove right there that he's in. That's where he's going to run the whole time. He's going to force Gossett to have to find somewhere else.
Yeah, and force Gossett to maybe lean on him a little bit to push him up out of that groove, but Bass is staying consistent to that second groove right there. That car is on rails. You see him run a little bit lower in 3 and 4, but that's the nature of the beast here at Homestead. It's kind of the preferred line. They're 3 and 4, like we talked about throughout the night, but they're 1 and 2. He is glued to that second groove. You see Gossett drives it in pretty deep, and he's on a little bit of a lift there mid corner, and he's going to slide up pretty hard. Oh man, I thought he was going to catch the wall. Yeah, that would have been race over there in terms of getting up there to win. But I think that might be the little slip up that Bass needed to just secure this. Coming around here to 4 laps to go.
One little bobble that might have cost the 43, but you can see he's only about maybe 4 car lengths back. Is there anything to be gained of running in the draft of someone on these straightaways?
It's not really. It's a pretty short straightaway in terms of what the draft will do to affect. Another man, Gossett is pushing. Nice. That car keeps pushing hard off of turn 2. He's really giving it everything he's got. He's put up quite a drive to get back here.
He's nearly on a first name basis with the turn 2 wall there. And he runs it wide again here off of 4. Nice run down the straightaway. He's going to have 2 laps to go, and it's now down to 2 car lengths. And don't count out that 62 of Reese. He's been hanging there as well, so we've got a 3-car fight for this victory.
Yeah, he's closed it up, but I think it is going to be between the 43 and the 97 unless something happens where they get them together. I think this is where you see Gossett start to change his line. You got to do that. He's going to start doing that diamond cut, but you see really drives it in deep, and I think that's where Bass has the advantage because from there off, Bass is better. You see him pull a little bit.
He's able to enter high and then cut it down low through the center. Take that low line off the corner, which also stifles the run. The 43 could maybe get on that inside line coming off the corner, as it's going to be a half a lap to decide it here. Bass, Gossett, and Reese, as it's about half a car length, make it a car length and a half down the back straightaway.
Might look for a dive here from the 43. Look for a dive. There it is. He's sending it in there. Made it stick. Not going to happen. Or is it?
Oh, wait a minute. It might. Bass tried to get back to the throttle. Couldn't do it. He's looking to the outside of Gossett at the line.
It's got him.
It says Bass. Holy cow.
1/1000th of a second he beat Gossett.
I thought for a brief moment it actually had worked for Gossett because Bass seemed to back up the corner a little too much to try and get a run. I didn't think he had a shot.
What a finish. I thought for sure. Oh, I'm just speechless. I thought that was a Carl Edwards move there from the 43 from Kansas back in whatever year that was. Oh, I cannot believe that he almost won that race with that move.
I don't think I've ever changed my mind so many times in the span of one turn. At first, I thought it was going to be Gossett. Then I thought it was Bass. Then I thought it was Gossett again. And in the end, it ends up being the 97 winning the battle back to the line. We got to go back and look at that interval. I mean, that was unexpected for sure.
It is so close, Seth. Wow. I'm 6/1000ths of a second. That's Talladega Daytona stuff there, that interval that we're looking at. Never in my wildest dreams would I have expected this race with Trey Green for so long to be so close at the line.
There you see where Gossett sent it in, and at this point right here, I thought he had it because he got back to the throttle sooner than I expected, but Bass around the outside, and even there, just looking back at the replay without having a freeze frame, it's incomprehensible to me, the fact that the scoring was able to pick out a winner from those two.
My eyes were just glued to the position indicator there on iRacing's replay system to see that adjust to a 1 from Gossett. I cannot believe that Bass. I'm like you. I thought Bass backed up he knew the dive was coming. He absolutely knew the dive was coming, and that's why he backed up the corner to arc it back down to the inside of Gossett and drive off of 4. But I thought after I saw Gossett floor it out of the wall, I thought that Bass maybe had backed it up too much and didn't get that run.
There you see it right there, and you can visibly see with the freeze frame that there is a difference, the 97 edging the 43, but you think about it too, I mean, these two, neither one were going to give an inch. Gossett's not in the playoffs. He's trying to go out there and win races here for the remainder of the playoffs, and Christopher Bass came into this race pretty much already locked into the next round, so what did he have to lose with racing this 43 as hard as he did?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad that move played out as clean as it did.
Yes.
I really would have hated to see the 43 wipe out the 97. I'm glad that's how it played out. What a fantastic finish that is.
Incredible. 6/1000ths, the interval, Bass over Gossett. Talk about a driver that's going to be carrying a lot of momentum into the next round of the playoffs. It would be that 97 car, but Christopher Reese, let's say that those two, of Bass and Gossett, had gotten together. Reese was right there to capitalize and maybe take this victory. He'll finish third. Chris Roberge will finish fourth after spending about the second third of this race off the lead lap. Chris Jonathan Leach, a great run for the 48 in fifth. Unfortunately for him, it will not be enough to advance into the next round of the playoffs. And Christopher Lawrence did exactly what he needed to do here today. He's going to be into the next round, moving Chris Hubka out of the next round. So it will be the 0-1 into the round of 8.
Seth, I want to go back real quick before you get to your interviews here. I want to point out too the decision from Chris Bass, Seth, to stay on the outside off the corner and make the pass back on the outside of the 43 rather than dive below and try to make the pass on the inside is what won him this race.
Yeah,
if he tries to do that on the inside, he bleeds off too much speed, and it's the 43 that wins the race.
A lot of times when you see those photo finishes, they're door banging or trying to side draft off each other. Those two couldn't have been any further away from each other coming to the start finish line. The 43 right down there near the apron, and the 97 right up against the wall.
I think that just goes to show how talented of a driver that Bass actually is, to have that, that mindset to just hold his course, stay his course, run that outside and use the momentum that he did have. He had the momentum. The 43 stalled out down the straightaway because of all the speed he bled off from hitting the wall. To use that momentum and just trust that momentum was going to carry him by, but man, it was just barely enough.
The first elimination race of the season for the cNASCAR Chris Cup Series is in the books, and of course, there is stuff possibly subject to change. We haven't gotten the official word yet, but according to what I have, the 8 drivers that will be moving on to the next round of Rockingham and Indianapolis will consist of tonight's race winner Chris Bass, Chris Roberge, Chris Noblet, Chris Personette, Chris Otto, Chris Jones, Christopher Reese, and Christopher Lawrence. And based off of what we've seen here tonight, considering those 8 drivers, yes, only 7 of them were in the field, but it's going to be so difficult to pick out a final 4 out of those guys.
Yeah, it really is. They've all been really tight in speed and the performance that those front runners have shown. It's going to be tough because the remaining schedule, as you said, we got Rockingham next week, and then after that we go to Indianapolis. So 2 tough tracks. That race at Indy is going to be exciting there for a season finale, because that's certainly going to come down to strategy. That track is so reliant on momentum that you carry throughout the lap. So the slightest mistake could cost you 4 or 5 seconds on the lap. So it's going to be really exciting to see. And then, of course, our finale at Phoenix in 3 weeks' time.
Well, let's go down and see if we can get some interviews with our top 3 finishers. Let's kick things off with the 62 of Christopher Reese, bringing it home 3rd place. Hey, Christopher Reese, it's Seth up here in the Flat Racing Network Studios. You got me?
Loud and clear, buddy.
Well, you got yourself a front row seat of what went down there in 3 and 4. I mean, if those two had gotten together, did you have any strategy to be able to sneak by those two and try and take this victory for yourself?
Oh, yeah, I was it's what we were just talking about in the interview room. I was kind of hoping that Tommy didn't clear him and I could have snuck past and stole one, but didn't work out that way. But I'm happy with the top 3. It's a good point today.
We saw obviously this race start out with a very long green flag run. So long you guys were able to make a round of green flag pit stops, but we kind of saw in that first run a lot of comers and a lot of goers, drivers making forward progress, drivers kind of falling back. We saw you kind of do both. You kind of fell back as we got about 20 laps in, but then when we got around the lap 40 mark, you were making forward progress again.
Yeah, this track it eats up the right front tire. So for the first part of the race, I was just completely in conserve mode. Let guys go use their stuff up and catch them later. It's a long race, and that's kind of what my strategy coming into it was.
You know, your position coming into the points here tonight, right near that cut line, 7th in the point stands. You had yourself about a 19-point gap back to the first driver out. With having such a great run here tonight of 3rd place, how important is that to you moving on to the round of 8 with tracks like Rockingham and Indianapolis coming up?
Oh, it's a major help because I really don't. I've maybe made a grand total of 20 laps at Indy, and probably about the same at Rockingham. So I'm gonna have to hit both tracks hard in the next coming weeks to try and get up to that top 4 with them boys.
Well, Chris, obviously an incredible run for you here tonight. Tremendous momentum heading into the round of 8. First off, congratulations on advancing into the next round. Got a chance now to be in the final 4 to compete for that championship at ISM. And we're going to let you do some shout-outs now.
Yeah, first and foremost, Chris Jones for putting this thing on for us, and everything he does. I'm sure we made him want to pull his hair out a time or two. I want to give a shout out to you guys, putting this on. It's one of the best broadcasts I've watched, and I've watched a bunch of them through dirt and so on. So you guys are doing a great job. And that's about it for me.
Well, that's Christopher Reese. He's going to bring it home. P3 here tonight. Advances into the next round of the playoffs. We look forward to seeing what you can do next week as you guys head to the Rock.
Thank you.
And let's get our 2nd place finisher, Chris Gossett.
Oh,
Hey, Chris, it's Seth up here in the Flat Racing Network Studios. You got me?
yes, I do.
Well, last week we saw the hardships of Chicagoland. Here tonight, though, what a finish here at Homestead Miami Speedway. We saw you throw it there into turn 3. You almost made it stick, but then we saw you just edge ahead of the 97 coming off turn 4. Did you think you maybe were going to get him at the line?
To be honest with you, I didn't have a clue. I mean, the racer in me wanted to turn right and try to block him and preserve the win, but then I was like, no, you know what? He's in the playoffs. I'm not. I'm just out here having fun this season, so I'm just going to throw it in here, see if it sticks, and if it does, it does. If it don't, it don't. I'll take whatever position I get.
Back on, I think it was the 2nd caution, actually it might have been the 1st caution, we saw you make the decision to stay out when everybody else behind you pitted. And Logan and I, we were kind of trying to bounce scenarios off each other of maybe what the strategy was there. Was there a strategy in play, or did everybody just kind of catch you off guard?
There was a strategy. Because we only had 3 tires, broke it down into how many even laps I could go on a set of tires, and I was outside that window. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to hope for a late race caution. And I ended up getting one, but on that last restart, I misjudged a move and got loose into one and got damaged. So, but yes, there was a strategy. Sorry, I started rambling.
We saw obviously in the early portion of this race, you got to the front and you just pulled away. What was it that you were able to find that just had you gapping everyone, even the longer the run went on?
Homestead's my favorite track. I love technical tracks like these. Here, Atlanta, Chicagoland, and Darlington are 4 of my best 5 tracks. And then we go to ISM, which I think is my 2nd best track to here. And then I love Indy. So I just love these technical tracks where you can drive the car different ways. Like some guys drive it harder in, I drive it easier in and finesse the throttle. I like to think I drive like Kevin Harvick, and some of these guys are heavy footed. So I think my driving style really is what separated me.
Well, obviously it's a lot of fun to see drivers that may not necessarily be battling for the championship being able to get up there and mix it up with the playoff contenders, and you've certainly done that here in the last 2 weeks. You bring it home just barely in the 2nd position, 6 1,000ths of a second short, but an unbelievable photo finish here tonight at Homestead. We're going to let you do some shout-outs now.
Yeah, first off, I got to thank God for being able to put me in the position to do this. Second off, I got to thank Carl Edwards for the inspiration to even attempt that move. Third, I got to thank my family. And fourth, I got to thank my team, Lowline Racing. And thank y'all for such a great broadcast. I'm just here to provide a little excitement for y'all at the tail end of this season.
Well, provide excitement you did. That is Chris Tommy Gossett. He brings it home P2 barely here tonight at Homestead.
Can I say one more thing? I'm
Yes,
sorry
you
to
can.
interrupt you. I don't know if y'all mentioned it or not, but I did recently start my own team in this league. It is called CGM, and we are actively looking for people to bring into the team throughout the rest of the season. So that's just another little tidbit in there that I'm evaluating every driver in this league to bring onto my team.
All righty. Well, that is Chris Tommy Gossett. Brings it home second place tonight at Homestead. Congrats on a great run. We look forward to seeing how you're going to mix it up with these playoff drivers next week at Rockingham.
Oh, yeah, it'll be fun.
And let's go down to Victory Lane where Chris Bass is standing by. Chris, it's Seth up here in the Flat Out Racing Network Studios. You got me?
I got you, brother.
Wow. That's all I can say. When I saw that whole exchange through 3 and 4, I mean, at first we thought it was going to be you, then we thought it was going to be Gossett, then we thought it was going to be you again, continually changing our mind, and it comes down to 6 1,000s at the line there. Talk about it from the driver's standpoint.
I don't think I've ever seen anything like that on iRacing or period. I didn't expect that in the least little bit. He jumped down below me, and it caught me off guard. It scared me. It worried me. It everything. And I knew he had to come back across the racetrack. So I jumped on the brakes, let him do that. And he hit the wall. And then I was like, there's no way he's going to pull that move off and win the race. And I honestly thought there for about 100 yards, I was like, there's no way I can catch him. And I don't know. He said his car had a lot of damage after he hit the wall, broke his steering, and good Lord willing. I mean, the good Lord blessed me with another one. I just don't know how to. I don't know. I don't have no clue. As you can tell, I'm tongue tied. I have no idea how I pulled that off.
Well, after that second caution, when you guys got the restart, we saw you kind of hang back and stay around the 7th position and then make forward progress as the run went on. Then we fast forward to that third caution coming out, and on that restart, you shot to the front. Looked like your car was pretty well set up for both the short and long runs tonight.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I really struggled there the first stint we had. I tried to imitate what Gossett was doing and just couldn't do it. And he's been a big help to me in the last few days, and he's become a pretty good friend. So it's good to see that kind of racing and that kind of clean racing and respect that he gives me and everybody gives each other. And it's just I really owe him a big thank you for all he's told and showed me and all kinds of stuff this week. So I owe a lot to him for tonight.
You know, Chris, obviously your situation coming into tonight's race was pretty good. You were definitely going to be locking yourself points-wise into the round of 8, but not only that, you pick up a victory heading into the next round of the playoffs. How important is that for you personally, knowing that you're heading into a round that's going to hold not only tough, but also technical tracks like Rockingham and Indianapolis?
It's really going to just come down to if you can match Gossett's pace at this point. It's basically him and then the field. It feels like at times, but it's a big confidence booster. You know, it's been a couple of races where I've just had to watch them set off into the sunset. So it was good to get one tonight, and finish was exciting, and I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Definitely was exciting. There's no doubt about that. Chris, obviously a tremendous amount of momentum here. We're definitely, I think, going to be looking in this second round to watch you possibly advance your way into that Final Four to compete for the championship when we get to Phoenix. But for now, we're going to let you do some shout-outs.
Yeah, I guess I'll shout out my sponsors on the car, Red Eye Designs, for their awesome paint schemes and the work that Brandy Emser Wiggins does for me, and a lot of the stuff that V1 Rotate Simulation Technologies has done for me, and my Uncle Jay and my friends and family for all their support, and you guys for the broadcast, Jones for one heck of a series, and like I said, Gossett for the stuff he's done for me this week. It's really been a big help, so I appreciate you guys.
Well, Chris Bass edges tonight by literally a splitter, 6 1,000ths of a second to take the checkered flag tonight at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Congrats on a great run. We look forward to seeing how this momentum carries over into the round of 8. Go enjoy your win.
I appreciate it, guys.
And so as the sun continues to hide behind the hills here in southern Florida, Logan, I mean, it's set on maybe one of the most exciting finishes I think I've ever seen here at Homestead Miami Speedway.
Well, yeah, I'm still lost for words there. I was not expecting that sort of a finish, and I'm glad Gossett referenced Carl Edwards' move back in Kansas from 2008 against Jimmy Johnson. That's exactly what I thought of whenever I saw him go up in the wall. I thought it was going to just be an easy pass for the 97, but Gossett made it work a lot better than Carl Edwards did, that's for sure.
Definitely did, and it came right down to the wire. And, with what we've seen here with a lot of these drivers like Bass, Reese, Roberge, Lawrence now advancing into the round of 8, it's gonna be difficult, I think, when we especially get to Rockingham to kind of separate out who we think is going to be the guys up there towards the forefront and the guys that may be in danger of advancing into that Final Four. Indy, for sure, I think is going to be the telltale place where it's all going to be decided.
Yeah, it's the Rockingham is going to be a twist. Like I personally, as a driver, I hate that place, but it'll be fun to watch and to call the race. But Indy is going to be I thought Homestead was a pretty dull elimination race, but this finish obviously proved me wrong. So I don't want to speak too much about Indy either, but from the way I know that place races, I think it's going to come down to strategy towards the end of this thing.
And the thing of it is, too, if you look in terms of the point standings coming into this first round, a lot of the points that we see in the separation coming into this first round were drivers, the playoff points they accumulate during the regular season. Now that we're done with the first round, the points are going to be a lot tighter when we get into the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah, and the intensity is going to do all but slow down. It's going to just ramp right up, and you're gonna see a lot more bumpers being thrown around, I think, regardless of the track we're at. And I can't wait to get to it, and can't wait to see who's left standing at the end of these next 2 weekends going into Phoenix.
Absolutely. So the momentum for sure is on the side of Chris Bass, but there are 7 other hungry drivers that want to advance into the final race at Phoenix Raceway with a chance at the championship as well. What a crazy one here tonight. A photo finish at Homestead Miami Speedway. Chris Bass over Chris Tommy Gossett. Logan, appreciate you joining me in the booth here tonight. I know I was kind of a fill-in, but boy, what a race to fill in at.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be back calling another race with you. I've missed doing that on Monday nights, so it's good to have you back up here, and hope we'll see you again.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody that tuned in here this evening as well. We hope you guys enjoyed this race as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Next week, they will be at the Rockingham Raceway, August 29th. Green flag will be scheduled to fly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Logan, I know that you'll be here. I believe Carlos will be back in the booth with you for that one as well. So be sure to enjoy that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to get back to the action. Kind of rack them up, restart, just like a restart here. Going to be a quick restart here on the postseason. Everybody on equal terms and going from there.
If you haven't had your fill of sim racing here tonight, be sure to check out another broadcast that has just gotten underway here on Flat Racing Network as Samuel Dyer and Michael Norman bring you coverage of Dover International Raceway in the Soda Guys Cup Series. And you'll be able to watch them as they're getting close to the end of their regular season, getting ready for their playoffs. But for Logan Brakey, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in here tonight to another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.